The sky above Valor 7 burned like a dying world. Dark smoke rolled across the clouds while giant enemy warships floated over the planet like metal mountains. Red fire fell from the heavens every few seconds. Each explosion shook the ground hard enough to crack roads and destroy buildings. The city of Reiner was dying. People ran through the streets carrying children, bags, and whatever food they could still find. Some cried. Some screamed names into the smoke, hoping their families were still alive. Most never got an answer. Far above the city, hundreds of Karn Dominion fighters moved through the air in perfect formation. Their engines growled like angry beasts. Blue plasma bolts rained down on the last defense towers. One tower exploded. Then another. Inside the underground command bunker beneath the city, Captain Alaris stood silently in front of a damaged holographic map. Her silver eyes looked tired. Dust covered her dark military uniform. A small cut above her forehead slowly dripped blood down her face. Nobody inside the bunker spoke. Because everyone already knew the truth. They were losing. The holographic map flickered badly. Almost every defense line on the screen had turned red. The Karn Dominion had broken through the northern wall only 20 minutes earlier. Now they were marching directly toward the civilian shelters. A young officer rushed toward Alaris. "Captain, we lost contact with the western batteries." Alaris closed her eyes for one short second. "How many are left?" The officer looked down. "Maybe 3 guns still working. Maybe. Not even certainty anymore." Another explosion shook the bunker ceiling. Dust fell everywhere. Some lights turned off for a moment before emergency power activated. In one corner, medics treated wounded soldiers on the floor because all medical rooms were already full. Many soldiers were barely adults. Some were crying quietly. Others simply stared at nothing. They had been fighting for 11 straight days. 11 days without real sleep. 11 days waiting for help. And help never came. An older communications officer slowly removed his headset and looked toward Alaris. His face had lost all color. The Galactic Union sent their final message. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Alaris walked toward him carefully. "Play it." Static filled the room. Then a cold voice spoke through the speakers. "To the defenders of Valor 7. Union reinforcements are unavailable. All nearby fleets are currently engaged in defensive operations. You are ordered to hold position as long as possible. May the stars guide you." The message ended. Silence filled the bunker. One soldier slammed his fist against the wall. "That's it," he shouted. "That's all they send us." Nobody answered him. Because everyone understood what the message truly meant. The Union had abandoned them. Alaris stared at the dead communication screen. For years, Valor 7 had supplied food, fuel, and minerals to the Union worlds. They paid taxes. They followed laws. They trusted the system. And now, when the Karn came to destroy them, nobody came. Outside, warning sirens screamed again. Another officer rushed into the room. Enemy dropships entering the lower city. The holographic map updated again. More red lights. More lost ground. The Karn were getting closer. Alaris forced herself to stay calm. "All remaining defense teams fall back to Sector 7, she ordered. "Protect the civilian shelters at all costs." The officers quickly moved to follow her command. But everyone knew Sector 7 would not survive long. The bunker speakers suddenly cracked with static again. A new voice echoed across every channel on the planet. Deep. Slow. Cruel. The Karn commander. "People of Valor 7, your allies have abandoned you. Your fleets are gone. Your defenses are broken. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Fear spread through the bunker instantly. Some civilians nearby began crying. The voice continued. No one is coming to save you. Then the transmission ended. Ilaris looked around the room. For the first time since the war began, she saw something worse than fear in her soldiers. Hopelessness. That terrified her more than enemy weapons. A little girl suddenly entered the bunker holding her mother's hand. Her face was dirty from smoke. She looked up at Ilaris. Are the monsters coming here too? The mother tried to pull the child away quickly. But Ilaris knelt beside her. We won't let them hurt you, she said softly. The little girl nodded slowly. But Ilaris hated herself in that moment. Because she did not know if it was true. Hours passed. The battle outside became louder. Closer. Every few minutes another emergency report arrived. Another street lost. Another defense team destroyed. Another shelter hit. Finally, the communications officer looked toward Ilaris again. There may still be one option. Ilaris turned toward him. What option? The officer hesitated. A deep space distress signal. Another officer shook his head immediately. It's useless. The nearest friendly fleet is too far away. But the old communications officer continued speaking. There is one group close enough. The room became silent again. Everyone understood who he meant. Humans. The strange warriors from Earth. Very little was known about them in Union space. Some called them heroes. Others called them monsters. Stories about human soldiers spread across the galaxy like myths. Entire pirate fleets destroyed in hours. Human ships fighting even after losing engines. Human marines surviving impossible battles. But humans rarely joined Union wars. They stayed near their own territory. Ilaris crossed her arms. How far are they? Several systems away, the officer answered. Even if they answer immediately, they may still arrive too late. Too late. Those words hung heavily in the bunker. Outside, another massive explosion shook the city. The lights flickered again. Ilaris looked at the terrified civilians around her. Then at the exhausted soldiers. Then at the burning map of her dying world. Finally, she spoke quietly. Send the signal. The officer nodded and activated the long-range transmitter. A weak distress signal shot into deep space. One final cry for help. Then everyone waited. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. The battle outside only grew worse. Suddenly, one radar technician frowned at his scanner. That's strange. Ilaris walked over. What is it? The technician adjusted the screen. For 1 second. I detected multiple warp signatures near the edge of the system. How many ships? The technician swallowed nervously. Hundreds. The room froze. Then the signal disappeared. The technician shook his head quickly. It must be an error. The scanners are damaged. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was only false hope. Outside the bunker, alarms suddenly screamed louder than before. A soldier shouted from the hallway. Karn invasion force entering the capital district. This was the end. Everyone knew it. Ilaris grabbed her rifle. All units prepare for final defense positions. Soldiers slowly stood up. Tired. Wounded. Afraid. But ready. Then. Every communication channel on the planet went silent. The Karn transmission disappeared. The radar systems froze. Even the air itself seemed to stop moving. One by one, confused soldiers looked upward. A deep sound rolled across the sky above Valor 7. Like thunder. The clouds began to shake violently. Then someone whispered. "What is that?" Far above the burning city, thousands of bright lights suddenly appeared in the heavens. Not stars. Not missiles. Drop pods. An endless storm of metal falling from the sky. The sky above Valor 7 looked alive. Thousands of burning objects ripped through the clouds like falling stars. Long trails of fire crossed the darkness while thunder shook the air again and again. For one silent moment, both sides stopped fighting. Terran soldiers stared upward from broken streets and ruined buildings. Even the Karn invasion forces paused. Nobody understood what they were seeing. Then the first drop pod slammed into the ground. Boom! The impact destroyed an empty transport vehicle beside the landing zone. Dust and broken metal flew into the air. A second pod crashed nearby. Then a third. Then hundreds more. The entire battlefield shook violently. Captain Alaris climbed onto the remains of a destroyed barricade and looked toward the burning city square. Her silver eyes widened as giant metal pods crashed across the streets around the Karn forces. The enemy soldiers began shouting in panic. One Karn officer screamed orders through his helmet communicator. But it was too late. With loud metallic sounds, the pods slowly opened. Steam poured into the cold night air. And figures stepped out of the smoke. Humans. The soldiers of Earth had arrived. They wore massive black combat armor covered in scratches and battle marks. Small blue lights glowed across their chest plates and helmets. Heavy rifles rested in their hands like extensions of their bodies. They moved fast. Too fast. Without hesitation, the human soldiers opened fire. Bright railgun rounds tore through Karn front lines instantly. Enemy armor exploded apart like paper. One Karn transport vehicle tried to turn around. A human rocket slammed into it before it could escape. The explosion lit the entire street orange. Terran soldiers watched in complete shock. The humans fought differently from every species in the galaxy. No fear. No confusion. No wasted movement. Only pure focus. A Karn heavy walker turned its giant plasma cannon toward the newly arrived humans. Before it could fire, 3 human soldiers slid behind cover while another launched a missile from one knee. The missile hit the walker directly in its center. The giant machine exploded into burning pieces. Cheers suddenly erupted across nearby Terran defense lines. For the first time in days, the Karn were retreating. Alaris could hardly believe what she was seeing. The unstoppable enemy army was falling back. Human dropships now screamed through the sky above the city. Smaller fighter craft chased Karn aircraft between burning towers. Explosions flashed everywhere. One human gunship hovered low over the battlefield and unleashed heavy fire into enemy positions. Karn soldiers scattered in panic. A Terran officer ran toward Alaris, breathing hard. "Captain, the humans are pushing the Karn out of Sector 7. Alaris looked toward the battlefield again. Human soldiers moved through smoke and fire like machines built for war. They protected civilians while attacking enemy forces at the same time. One human marine carried 2 injured Terran children in his arms while firing his rifle one-handed at advancing Karn troops. Another human soldier dragged wounded defenders into safety before returning to the front line. The stories were true. Maybe even worse than the stories. Because humans were terrifying. But not to the people they protected. Suddenly, several armored vehicles approached Alaris's position. The vehicles were larger than anything used by the Terran military. Heavy cannons rotated slowly on top while blue lights glowed across thick armor plates. The front vehicle stopped. Its side door opened with a hiss. A tall human officer stepped out. Unlike the other soldiers, his armor carried silver markings across the shoulders. A long scar crossed the left side of his face. His eyes looked cold and calm at the same time. He walked directly toward Ilaris. Two human soldiers followed behind him. Ilaris straightened herself carefully. "You are in command here?" the human asked. His voice sounded deep and controlled. "Yes," Ilaris answered. "Captain Ilaris of Valor 7 Defense Command." The human gave a short nod. "Colonel Marcus Kane. Earth Expeditionary Force." Ilaris stared at him for a moment. She still could not understand why they came. "You received our distress signal?" "We did. You came very quickly." Kane looked toward the burning city. "We were closer than your scanners realized." Another explosion echoed nearby. Kane calmly touched a device on his wrist. A holographic battlefield map appeared in the air between them. Red enemy markers covered half the city. But blue markers were spreading fast. "Human forces. Our orbital fleet has engaged the Karn blockade," Kane said. "Ground teams are securing civilian zones and defense centers." Ilaris looked at him carefully. "Why help us?" Kane finally looked directly into her eyes. "Because someone asked for help." His answer sounded simple. But something about it felt heavy. As if humanity followed a rule older than war itself. A nearby human soldier suddenly spoke through his helmet. "Colonel, enemy armor column moving east." Kane answered immediately. "Send 2nd Battalion to intercept." "No enemy units reach the shelters." "Yes, sir." The soldier moved away. Ilaris watched the humans carefully. They were organized in a way she had never seen before. Every movement connected perfectly. Every soldier trusted the others completely. No panic. No wasted time. Only discipline. A loud scream suddenly echoed across the street. A damaged building nearby began collapsing toward a group of trapped civilians. Without thinking, two human soldiers ran forward. One activated a strange mechanical device on his armor. A blue energy shield expanded outward just before the building crashed down. Dust exploded everywhere. When the smoke cleared, the civilians were alive. The human soldiers pulled them out safely. Ilaris slowly shook her head in disbelief. "Why risk your lives for strangers?" Kane answered without emotion. "That's what soldiers are supposed to do." Before Ilaris could reply, another officer rushed toward Kane quickly. "Colonel, Fleet Command reports successful orbital breach." Kane nodded once. "Good. Begin Phase 2. Ilaris frowned. Phase 2. Kane enlarged the holographic map. Multiple human warships appeared around the planet. Massive ships. Far larger than the Karn destroyers above orbit. Ilaris felt her stomach tighten. "You didn't send a rescue fleet," she whispered. Kane looked at the map calmly. "No." The human officer zoomed in toward enemy positions across the planet. "This is not a rescue mission." At that exact moment, huge explosions lit the upper atmosphere. Human warships fired from orbit. Several Karn capital ships disappeared in giant fireballs. Shockwaves rolled across the clouds. Kane's voice stayed cold and steady. "Earth has declared full military action against the Karn Dominion presence in this system." Ilaris stared at him. "You came to destroy them." "Yes." For the first time since the war began, she almost felt sorry for the Karn. Suddenly, warning alarms flashed across the holographic map. A human technician shouted from inside the armored vehicle. "Unknown energy source detected beneath the planet's surface." Kane turned sharply. "Location?" The technician highlighted an area directly beneath the capital city. Energy readings rose rapidly. Too rapidly. Ilaris looked confused. What is that? The human technician's face turned pale. I don't know, he answered quietly. But whatever it is, it's waking up. The battle above Valor 7 still burned across the sky. Explosions flashed through the clouds while human warships fought the Karn fleet high above the planet. The ground shook every few minutes from orbital bombardments. But deep beneath the ruined capital city, another danger waited in silence. Captain Ilaris stood beside Colonel Marcus Kane inside a large underground transport elevator. Around them, heavily armed human soldiers checked weapons and scanners while the platform slowly moved downward into darkness. The air felt cold and heavy. Nobody spoke much. The strange energy signal beneath the city continued growing stronger every minute. One human technician looked nervous while studying his scanner screen. Energy readings are still rising, he reported. Source is nearly 5 kilometers below surface level. Kane crossed his arms. Any idea what we're dealing with? The technician shook his head. No, sir. But it's not natural. The elevator suddenly shook hard. Dust fell from above. Ilaris looked upward carefully. The Karn have tunnels all across the lower levels, she warned. If they know we're coming, they'll ambush us. Kane loaded fresh ammunition into his rifle calmly. Then we move faster. The elevator doors opened a few moments later. Darkness waited outside. Human soldiers immediately spread out, their helmet lights cutting through the shadows. Ancient metal walls stretched endlessly through the underground tunnels. Strange symbols covered the surfaces, worn down by time. Ilaris felt uneasy immediately. These tunnels weren't built by the Terran, she whispered. One human soldier touched the wall carefully. Looks older than the colony itself. The group moved deeper underground. Every step echoed through the silent corridors. Somewhere far away, strange mechanical sounds echoed softly in the darkness. The deeper they traveled, the stranger the tunnels became. The walls no longer looked damaged or abandoned. Hidden blue lights slowly flickered alive as the team passed. Ancient machines rested behind sealed doors covered in dust. Human scanners beeped constantly. One soldier looked toward Kane. Sir. I'm detecting massive power systems beneath us. How massive? The soldier hesitated. City-sized. Ilaris exchanged worried looks with Kane. Suddenly. Gunfire exploded ahead. Bright plasma bolts slammed into the tunnel walls. Karn ambush, the human marine shouted. Enemy soldiers appeared from hidden side passages, firing wildly. The narrow tunnel instantly became chaos. Human soldiers dropped into defensive positions with perfect speed. Return fire. Kane ordered. Railgun shots thundered through the corridor. Several Karn soldiers fell instantly. Ilaris fired beside the humans, shocked again by how calmly they fought even inside tight underground spaces. A Karn heavy trooper pushed forward with a plasma cannon. Before he could fire, one human marine charged directly toward him. The marine slammed into the enemy soldier with terrifying force. Both crashed into the wall. Sparks exploded everywhere. The human soldier stabbed an energy blade through the Karn armor. The enemy collapsed instantly. Ilaris stared in disbelief. Humans fought like they were born for war. More Karn troops rushed into the tunnel. But the humans held their line perfectly. One marine covered civilians behind him while another dragged an injured Terran soldier to safety. Even during battle, they protected others first. Finally, the remaining Karn forces retreated deeper underground. Silence returned slowly. Smoke drifted through the corridor. A wounded Terran defender looked at a human medic treating his injuries. "Why are you helping me first?" he asked weakly. "Your own soldiers are hurt too." The human medic gave a small shrug. "You're hurt worse." The simple answer confused the Terran soldier completely. As the team continued deeper underground, Ilaris walked beside Kane quietly. "I don't understand humans," she admitted. Kane looked ahead. "Most species don't. You risk yourselves for strangers. Even now." Kane stayed silent for a few seconds. Then he finally spoke. "Because we remember what it feels like." Ilaris frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" The human colonel's voice became quieter. "Long ago, before humanity joined the stars, Earth almost died." The tunnel lights reflected against his scarred face. "We fought our own wars. Lost entire cities. Millions of people." He paused briefly. "There were times humanity begged for help too." Ilaris listened carefully. "But nobody came," Kane finished. The silence after those words felt heavy. For the first time, Ilaris began understanding why humans answered the distress signal. Not because of politics. Not because of money. Because they knew abandonment. Suddenly, the human scanner operator stopped walking. Movement ahead. Everyone raised weapons immediately. A massive door slowly appeared at the end of the corridor. Unlike the old tunnels, this structure looked untouched by time. Smooth black metal. Strange glowing symbols. And one massive emblem in the center. The human technician's eyes widened. "This technology is ancient." Ilaris stepped closer carefully. "Because whatever is behind this door, it's producing enough energy to power entire fleets." The humans quickly placed explosive charges around the sealed entrance. Kane looked toward his soldiers. "Prepare for contact." The charges detonated with a loud boom. Smoke filled the corridor. Slowly, the giant doors began opening. Cold air rushed outward from the darkness inside. Then the team entered. Everyone froze. The chamber beyond was enormous. An entire hidden city stretched beneath the planet's surface. Towering machines filled the darkness. Blue lights glowed across giant metal structures connected by bridges and cables. Strange containers lined the walls in endless rows. Everything looked impossibly ancient. And yet, still active. The human technician stared at his scanner in horror. "Dear God." Kane stepped forward carefully. "What is it?" The technician swallowed hard. "This isn't a factory." He pointed toward the giant central structure in the middle of the underground city. "It's a weapon." At that exact moment, red warning lights suddenly flashed across the chamber. A deep mechanical sound echoed everywhere. The giant structure slowly began powering on. The ground trembled violently. Ancient machines awakened one after another across the hidden city. Then a voice echoed through the darkness. Cold. Mechanical. Unknown. Nobody understood the language. But everyone understood one thing. Something had just awakened beneath Valor 7. And it had been sleeping for a very long time. Red warning lights flashed across the underground city. The giant machine in the center of the chamber slowly came alive. Deep mechanical sounds rolled through the darkness while ancient systems powered on one after another. The ground trembled beneath everyone's feet. Captain Ilaris stared at the enormous structure in shock. Blue energy moved through massive cables connected to the ceiling above. Giant metal towers surrounded the machine like guardians protecting something dangerous. The cold mechanical voice echoed again. Nobody understood the language. But it sounded old. Very old. Human soldiers raised their weapons carefully while scanners beeped loudly across the chamber. One technician stepped beside Colonel Marcus Kane. "Energy levels are rising fast," he warned. "This entire place is activating." Kane looked around the underground city. "Can you shut it down?" The technician shook his head slowly. "We don't even know what it is yet." Suddenly, bright symbols appeared across the walls around them. Strange holograms floated in the air above the giant machine. The hidden city was waking up completely. Elaris felt nervous. "This place was beneath our colony the entire time." "No," the technician answered quietly. "Your colony was built on top of this place." A loud explosion suddenly echoed through the chamber entrance behind them. Human soldiers immediately turned toward the sound. "Karn forces incoming," one Marine shouted. Plasma fire flashed through the tunnels. The Karn had followed them underground. Kane grabbed his rifle. Defensive positions. Human Marines quickly moved across the chamber. Some took cover behind ancient machines while others protected the technicians working near the central structure. Elaris joined a group near the entrance tunnel. Moments later, Karn soldiers stormed into the underground city. Heavy plasma fire filled the air instantly. The battle began again. But this fight felt different. More desperate. More dangerous. The Karn were not trying to destroy the chamber. They were trying to capture it. A massive Karn commander entered behind the assault troops. His black armor looked larger and stronger than normal soldiers. Deep scars crossed his face. His yellow eyes locked onto the central machine. "There it is," he growled. Kane narrowed his eyes. "You know what this place is?" The Karn commander slowly smiled. "Yes." Human railguns opened fire again. The Karn forces spread through the chamber while explosions shook ancient bridges above the city floor. The giant machine continued glowing brighter. The mechanical voice kept speaking through hidden speakers across the city. One human scientist worked quickly at a nearby control panel. "I'm translating part of the system language." Kane looked toward him. "What does it say?" The scientist's face slowly lost color. "This isn't just a weapon vault." He looked toward the giant structure. "It's a planetary cleansing system." Elaris frowned. "What does that mean?" The scientist swallowed nervously. "It was built to erase entire star systems." Silence hit everyone nearby. Even the sounds of battle felt distant for one terrible moment. Entire star systems. Gone. Kane looked toward the Karn commander. "You invaded this planet for this machine." The Karn leader laughed darkly. "The Dominion searched for this vault for generations." He slowly spread his arms toward the ancient city. "With this power, no civilization could challenge us." A loud explosion shook the chamber again. Human soldiers pushed the Karn back from one side of the city while more enemy reinforcements entered from the tunnels. The battle grew larger every minute. Above them, ancient bridges collapsed into the darkness below. One human marine grabbed Elaris and pulled her away seconds before falling debris crushed the ground beside her. "You okay?" the marine asked quickly. Elaris nodded in shock. The marine immediately returned to the fight. No hesitation. No fear. The humans continued protecting others even during complete chaos. Suddenly, the ancient machine released a massive pulse of blue energy. The entire city shook violently. Every light turned bright white for 1 second. Then dozens of hidden doors across the underground chamber slowly opened. Mechanical sounds echoed everywhere. Something was moving inside the walls. The human technician stared at his scanner in horror. "Oh no. What now?" Elaris asked. Before he could answer, metal figures stepped out from the darkness. Ancient defense machines. Tall armored robots with glowing blue eyes. There were hundreds of them. The machines immediately scanned every living being inside the city. Then the mechanical voice echoed again. This time, the translation system partially understood it. Unauthorized biological presence detected. The robots raised weapons. Initiating purification protocol. The machines opened fire instantly. Blue energy blasts tore across the chamber. Humans and Karn soldiers both scattered for cover. One Karn trooper exploded apart after taking a direct hit. Another machine fired into a group of human marines. A human soldier jumped in front of two wounded civilians and raised his energy shield. The shield cracked instantly under the attack. But the civilians survived. The human soldier collapsed heavily beside them. Alaris rushed toward him. The marine's armor smoked badly from the blast. Blood ran from beneath his helmet. Still, he looked toward the frightened civilians first. "You safe?" he asked weakly. The civilians nodded. The marine gave a small smile. Then he slowly stood again despite his injuries. Alaris stared at him in disbelief. "Why are you still fighting?" The marine checked his rifle calmly. "Nobody gets left behind." Then he returned to the battlefield. The ancient defense machines attacked everyone without stopping now. Karn soldiers and humans were forced to fight side by side just to survive. The underground city became complete chaos. Explosions flashed across ancient towers. Metal bridges collapsed into deep darkness below. Blue energy fire lit the chamber like lightning storms. Kane moved beside his soldiers while firing controlled bursts at advancing machines. "We need control of that central core," he shouted. The scientist pointed toward the giant machine. "If we don't shut it down soon, the purification sequence may activate completely." The Karn commander heard him. His eyes widened in sudden fear. "You don't understand," he shouted. "If the core awakens fully, this planet dies." The mechanical voice suddenly echoed once more across the entire city. Louder this time. Colder. System activation at 30%. The ground trembled violently again. Huge sections of the underground city began moving like giant machines waking from sleep. Alaris looked upward in horror as massive energy beams slowly formed above the central structure. "What happens at 100%, she asked quietly. Nobody answered immediately. Then the human scientist spoke. His voice barely above a whisper. "Everything dies." The underground city shook harder every minute. Massive energy beams glowed above the ancient machine while red warning lights flashed endlessly across the chamber. The mechanical voice continued speaking through hidden speakers like a cold god waking from sleep. "System activation, 42%. Captain Alaris looked around in horror. The hidden city was falling apart. Explosions echoed across the ancient structures while humans, Karn soldiers, and defense machines fought across bridges and platforms hanging above endless darkness. Nobody fully controlled the battlefield anymore. Chaos had taken over. A giant defense machine smashed through a metal wall nearby and opened fire. Blue energy blasts destroyed a group of Karn troops instantly. Human marines answered with railgun fire. The machine staggered backward but kept moving. "Fall back," one human soldier shouted. Civilians and wounded defenders ran across the chamber while human soldiers covered them from behind. Alaris watched a wounded marine struggle to walk beside two frightened Terran children. His armor was badly damaged. Blood covered one arm. Still, he kept moving. Still, he protected them. The human soldiers refused to abandon anyone. Colonel Marcus Kane stood near the central machine with several engineers and technicians. The giant structure towered above them like a mountain of metal and light. The human scientist worked quickly on a floating holographic console. "I'm trying to access the shutdown systems," he shouted over the noise. Can you stop it? Kane asked. The scientist hesitated. Maybe, but if the core reaches full activation. A massive explosion interrupted him. One of the upper bridges collapsed into the darkness below. Dust and fire filled the air. The ancient voice echoed again. System activation, 49%. Kane looked toward Alaris. We're running out of time. Suddenly, alarms screamed through human communication systems. A soldier ran toward Kane. Colonel. More Karn reinforcements entering from the eastern tunnels. Alaris looked shocked. They're still trying to take the machine. Kane's face darkened. No. Now they're trying to survive. Moments later, heavy Karn forces stormed into the chamber again. But this time, they were desperate. The Karn commander pushed through the battlefield with elite troops surrounding him. His armor burned from earlier fighting. He pointed toward the central core. If we control the machine, we may still stop the purge. Human marines immediately blocked the path. Gunfire exploded again. Humans and Karn forces crashed into another brutal battle while ancient machines attacked both sides without mercy. Alaris fired beside a group of human soldiers near the civilian evacuation zone. A defense machine climbed across the wall toward them like a giant metal insect. One marine launched a grenade directly into its chest. The machine exploded into burning pieces. Another human soldier helped wounded civilians into an armored transport vehicle. Hurry! Move! The civilians climbed inside quickly. Alaris noticed something strange. Even now. Even while the entire planet faced destruction. The humans still protected civilians first. She looked toward Kane again. The human colonel fought near the center platform, firing calmly while issuing orders through his communicator. Every soldier obeyed instantly. No panic. No fear. Only duty. Suddenly, a loud mechanical sound echoed through the chamber. Everyone froze for one terrible second. The ancient machine above them began opening. Massive metal sections slowly separated apart while blue energy swirled inside the core. The human scientist stared upward in horror. Oh no! Kane turned sharply. What is it now? The scientist's hands shook slightly over the controls. The system is preparing long-range firing sequences. Alaris frowned. Meaning? The scientist looked pale. If it activates fully, it won't only destroy this planet. Silence hit the nearby soldiers. Then the scientist finished speaking. It will erase the entire solar system. Even the Karn troops stopped firing for a moment after hearing those words. Entire solar system. Gone. Human fleet. Terran colonies. Everything. Kane looked upward toward the glowing core. Then he spoke calmly into his communicator. All Earth forces, priority change. Mission is now full containment. One Marine answered immediately. Understood, Colonel. No fear in his voice. No hesitation. Alaris could hardly understand it. The humans had every reason to retreat. Their fleet could still escape orbit. They could leave Valor 7 behind. But they stayed. They kept fighting. Not for territory. Not for power. For people. The truth finally became clear inside Alaris's mind. Humanity was dangerous not because of their weapons. Not because of their warships. Humanity was dangerous because they would sacrifice everything for strangers. The ancient voice echoed again. System activation, 64%. Time was running out. Suddenly, a group of Karn elite soldiers broke through human defenses and rushed toward the central control platform. The Karn commander shouted loudly. Take the core. Human Marines intercepted them instantly. Close combat exploded across the platform. Energy blades flashed through the darkness. Gunfire echoed at point-blank range. One human soldier tackled a Karn warrior directly off the platform edge. Both disappeared into the darkness below. Ilaris stared in shock. The humans fought like they had already accepted death. Kane grabbed a fallen rifle and fired into advancing Karn troops. Then his communicator beeped. A voice came from orbit. "Colonel, Fleet Command reports increasing energy levels planet-wide. We may lose the window for evacuation." Kane answered immediately. "Continue civilian extraction." "Sir, what about your team?" Kane looked toward the glowing machine above them. "We finished the mission." The transmission ended. The scientist suddenly shouted. "I found a manual shutdown sequence." Hope flashed across the nearby soldiers. Kane moved toward him quickly. "What do you need?" The scientist pointed toward the center of the giant machine. "The core must be shut down physically from inside." Ilaris looked upward. The center chamber glowed with dangerous energy. "That's impossible," she whispered. The scientist shook his head slowly. "No. Just deadly." The room became silent again. Everyone understood what that meant. Kane looked toward the central core for several seconds. Then he removed his damaged helmet. "I'll do it." Ilaris stepped forward immediately. "No. There has to be another way." Kane gave a small tired smile. "There usually isn't." Around them, the battle continued growing worse. Defense machines moved closer. The chamber ceiling began collapsing. The ancient voice echoed again. "System activation, 72%. Kane turned toward his soldiers. "Hold the line. Protect the evacuation." The Marines nodded instantly. None argued. None tried stopping him. Because they trusted him completely. Kane looked toward Ilaris one final time. "If we fail," he said quietly, "make sure your people leave this planet." Before she could answer, he grabbed the emergency control device from the scientist and ran toward the glowing core chamber. Human soldiers immediately formed defensive positions around him. The Karn commander realized what was happening. "Stop him," he roared. The final battle exploded across the underground city. Humans and Karn forces crashed together under falling fire and collapsing metal. At the center of the chaos, Marcus Kane disappeared into the heart of the ancient machine. Then the entrance sealed behind him. And moments later, all communication with him was lost. The underground city was dying. Massive explosions tore through the ancient chamber while metal structures collapsed into fire and darkness. Red warning lights flashed everywhere. Smoke filled the air so heavily that breathing became difficult. Captain Ilaris stood beside the remaining human soldiers near the evacuation zone. Everyone looked toward the sealed core chamber where Colonel Marcus Kane had disappeared. No communication. No signal. Nothing. The ancient machine continued shaking violently around them. System activation, 81%. The cold mechanical voice echoed across the underground city again. Human Marines held defensive lines while civilians rushed toward evacuation transports. Some soldiers were wounded badly, but none left their positions. The Karn forces were retreating now. Fear had finally broken them. Even their commander understood the truth. The ancient weapon could no longer be controlled. It was about to destroy everything. A loud explosion thundered across the chamber as another section of the ceiling collapsed. Dust and burning metal crashed onto the battlefield below. One human marine helped an injured Terran child into a transport shuttle before turning back toward the fight. Ilaris grabbed his arm. "You should leave too." The Marine checked his rifle calmly. Not until everyone else is out. Then he returned to the front line. Alaris watched him disappear into smoke and gunfire. Humans truly were different. The ancient voice echoed again. System activation, 87%. The scientist working beside Alaris looked terrified. If the Colonel cannot shut down the core soon, we're all dead. Suddenly, the entire underground city shook harder than before. The glowing machine above them released a giant wave of blue energy that rolled across the chamber like a storm. Every light turned white. Then black. For one terrible second, silence filled the city. Then emergency power returned. The scientist looked at his scanner in confusion. The activation sequence stopped climbing. Hope flashed across Alaris's face. Did he do it? Before anyone could answer, the ancient machine screamed. Not like a normal machine. Like something alive and angry. Blue energy exploded across the chamber walls. Huge cracks spread through the central core. The scientist's eyes widened. He overloaded the system. The ancient voice suddenly changed. Broken. Distorted. Critical failure detected, critical failure detected. The humans immediately understood. Everyone evacuate now, a Marine shouted. The underground city began collapsing completely. Massive support towers crashed into the darkness below while ancient machines exploded one after another. Human soldiers pulled civilians toward the last evacuation transports. The remaining Karn troops fled in complete panic. Alaris looked toward the sealed core chamber one last time. Marcus Kane never came out. Pain filled her chest. After everything. After saving the entire planet. The human colonel had died alone inside the machine. A transport pilot shouted from nearby. Captain. We need to leave now. The floor beneath them cracked apart violently. Alaris finally climbed aboard the evacuation shuttle beside wounded civilians and exhausted soldiers. The shuttle engines roared to life. Moments later, the transport escaped the collapsing underground city. Behind them, fire and blue energy consumed the ancient chamber forever. The hidden city of Valor 7 disappeared beneath falling rock and molten metal. The weapon below was gone. But so was Marcus Kane. Hours later, the sun slowly rose above Valor 7. For the first time in many days, the sky no longer burned. The Karn fleet was retreating from orbit. Human warships followed them through deep space, forcing the surviving enemy ships out of the system completely. The war was over. Valor 7 had survived. But victory did not feel joyful. Not completely. Across the ruined capital city, rescue teams searched through destroyed streets and collapsed shelters looking for survivors. Human soldiers worked beside Terran civilians without rest. Food stations opened. Medical camps filled the streets. The humans stayed to help rebuild instead of leaving after the battle. Alaris stood near one of the emergency camps watching rescue ships land across the city. Children gathered around human Marines with curiosity instead of fear now. Some even smiled. A young Terran boy pointed toward the sky. Are the humans leaving? His mother looked uncertain. Before Alaris could answer, a loud sound echoed across the camp. Everyone looked toward the distant mountains beyond the city. A damaged transport ship slowly rose from behind the hills. Its engine sparked badly. Smoke poured from one side. But it was flying. Human soldiers suddenly started shouting into their communicators. The transport moved closer. Closer. Then Alaris saw the Earth military symbol painted across the hull. Her heart nearly stopped. The damaged ship landed hard outside the camp. Medics and soldiers rushed forward immediately. The rear door slowly opened. For one long moment, nobody moved. Then a tall figure stepped out through the smoke. Colonel Marcus Kane. His armor was burned black. One arm hung injured at his side. Blood covered part of his face. But he was alive. The entire camp erupted with cheers. Even exhausted civilians began clapping and crying with relief. Alaris could hardly believe it. Kane walked forward slowly while medics rushed toward him. "You survived," Alaris whispered. Kane gave a tired smile. "Barely." The scientist arrived moments later holding a scanner. "The core is completely destroyed," he reported. "The ancient system is gone." Kane nodded once. "Good." That single word carried the weight of everything humanity had sacrificed. Weeks later, new ships finally arrived at Valor 7. The Galactic Union fleet. Too late. Their officers looked shocked as they entered orbit above the recovering world. Human warships already protected the system. Relief stations filled the surface. Cities were rebuilding. And beside every Terran banner, Earth's flag stood proudly. The Union commanders expected ruins and death. Instead, they found survivors. Because humanity had answered the call. Alaris later stood before a large communication chamber preparing a transmission that would spread across known space. Millions would hear her words. She looked into the recording device quietly. Then she began speaking. "When Valor 7 burned, the galaxy abandoned us." Images of the war appeared behind her. Burning cities. Human drop pods falling from the sky. Soldiers carrying civilians through fire. But one species came. More images followed. Human marines defending shelters. Earth warships above orbit. Marcus Kane leading soldiers through battle. They did not ask for payment. They did not ask for territory. Her voice became softer. They simply came because someone needed help. Silence filled the chamber. Then Alaris spoke the final words that would spread across the stars forever. "When the galaxy left us to die, humanity came." Far above Valor 7, Earth's fleet prepared to leave orbit at last. A young Terran child stood beside a human marine near one landing platform. The child looked up curiously. "Why do humans fight so hard for people who are not your own?" The marine looked toward the stars quietly. Then he answered softly. "Because after everything humanity survived." He glanced toward the recovering world below. "Nobody deserves to stand alone."